What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler podcast, powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. We are back with part 2 of this week's live stream, and we are with Cliff Prince. We had a great part 1 of this week's show that went live Tuesday night with Tom Reddington. If you haven't listened to that one yet, click the episode before this one. If you'd like to listen to that one, there's a little bit of a lag, just a fair warning. But on this one, it was not a good week in regards to technology working with us, because in this show with Cliff, there is a little bit of reverb when we're talking. You can hear echo through Cliff's camera or microphone, excuse me. And so I did my best to try to mute it while we're talking, but also not, cover up anything Cliff's trying to say. But for the most part, if you can get through the little bit of an echo-ish deal there, you should be able to make it through the episode. But I didn't want to not put it out because it was a great episode with Cliff. He's an amazing guy from all the things we can see, talking with him here. I'm looking forward to meeting him next week at ICAST. Great show with him, and I'm so glad that he's now a Bassmaster champion, and looking forward to seeing him hoist that trophy again. So it's a great episode, Cliff. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, and we are back, and let's get on our second guest for tonight. Recent Bassmaster Elite Series champ, Mr. Cliff Prince. What's going on, sir?
What's up, fellas? How are y'all?
Good evening.
Well, I know we're going through it up here in New York in a very rare 90-degree days, muggy, just gross. And I feel like I'm in Florida, but how's it down there for you guys?
Hot. I mean, really hot, like 105. I mean, it's just brutal right now. It's been a hot summer for sure. When we were at Wheeler, it was hot, and I thought it was hot there until I got back home, and it's been brutally hot.
Yeah, who was it? Logan? I remember who it was that they were talking about the story of the gallon of water that they had that the sun melted. Something along was that? And like
Cooper.
It was Cooper. Yeah.
He said his plastic melted into the carpet. That's unbelievable.
Like if that's hot and then it was hotter when you got to Florida, I don't ever want to deal with that. I don't know how you do it.
I don't want to go to Florida in July.
No, we've got
good luck down there, bud.
We've got pavers that go from my house out to my barn where my boat's at. And the other day, my wife goes, "Hey, you run out there and get something for me?" Well, I just ripped out without shoes. Well, I wound up having to hit the dirt because I couldn't run across the pavers because it was so hot.
Just about burning the soles off your own feet, huh?
Oh, man, it was miserable.
Ooh, fry an egg on that. See how it turns out.
Cliff, before we go too much deeper into the show, one, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out. I've been looking forward to getting you on the show since the win, and really getting to see. Obviously we've seen you on live shows before on Bass with when you go to St. John's and other events, but the stuff we saw that Fear My Heart helped to bring out too, and Bass helped to bring out.
Yep.
You've become one of my favorites now, just from the pure passion of it. So I gotta say thanks for taking the time.
Yep.
But two is like we did with Tom. You guys are both your first time on the show before, and what we like to do is throw it way back to the very beginning and who is to blame for this lifelong passion.
Oh, man, coming up, my uncle was a guide, and I just thought that was the coolest thing that he got to fish for a living. And then when I graduated high school, I got to hang around some buddies of mine that they fished tournaments and stuff like that. And whenever I was in school, I rodeoed, and I was always into competition. I like competition. And then when I started fishing, and then I started fishing tournaments with my buddy, and then his dad, Manuel Spencer, he had fished 2 or 3 classics, and I started fishing tournaments with him. I got more interested in it, and that's how I started, tournament fishing. Was seeing his passion and learning from him how to find fish, and I've always had a passion for the outdoors. Either hunting or fishing. And I loved rodeoing whenever I was doing it, but my mind was always around hunting and fishing. And when I could put competition with my passion also, that was the nail in the coffin that sealed the deal,
Yeah. So about how old do you think you were when you realized you wanted to make this thing a career path?
I mean, I was 19 when I started tournament fishing, which is a lot older than the guys nowadays, but when I started tournament fishing and I started competing around here, and I was fishing federation stuff, and then I started fishing weekend series, traveling around the state, and I started fishing opens with my team partner. We'd traveled together, and I mean, I fished for 3 years and I qualified, and I was friends with Terry Scroggins, and I was hanging out with him, fishing with him a lot. And anyway, when I qualified, I really wasn't trying to qualify for the elites, but I was punching the clock for years here in Palaca. And then I bought a portable toilet business so I could travel and fish. And I was kind of at that point whenever I qualified. I'm like, I told my wife, I said, "Do you think we should try it?" And she was like, "We might as well give it a shot." Now it's 13 years later. I mean, I wasn't, like I say, I didn't fish the opens to qualify, but when it happened, it just kind of fell into place. I'm like, this is what I want to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't know until the opportunity comes knocking.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays everybody is pretty much fishing the elite, or the opens, or trying to get to the elites. But whenever I fished, there was, 3 or 4 guys that were trying to get there, but a lot of the guys didn't take their opportunity whenever they got there, so it wasn't pursued after as much as it is now, because I think it's to do with the younger anglers that are coming up from the juniors to the high school to the colleges. We're seeing all of that come to a head now, and all those guys, they're like, this is what I want to do, because there's that opportunity to grow up fishing and tournament fishing. And I think that's where we're getting the more of the drive, is because we've gotten younger kids into fishing, earlier, tournament fishing.
Yeah. That was the one thing with this whole rookie movement that we've seen. Some of the funnier points funnier comments that I've seen is everyone was talking about get more kids into fishing, and now some of the people see all the young kids getting into fishing, they're like, dang it, stop getting these kids into fishing. They're taking over.
Yeah. Watch what you ask for, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Get my heads kicked in,
Well, I'm curious from your standpoint, something that's been kind of cool that I've seen, and I'm still on the kayak side. Like I fish locally, some of the national stuff, and I've seen a bunch of high school kids get into the local kayak and even on the national kayak scene. Have you seen that from your neck of the woods down in Florida? Younger kids getting into the local tournaments too.
Not necessarily the kayak tournaments, but I've seen them. There's a lot of kids getting into the, my son come up through the juniors and through the high school, and now he's fishing college. There's a lot of kids down here. They've got a Florida trail, and I mean, there's 200 boats in every tournament now. So, and that's including juniors and high schools. So, I mean, that's a pile of kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one thing, though. Personal opinion, I think needs to be refined a little bit, because when you see like the high school championship and they got 500 boats, I feel like that kind of takes away from a championship feel a little bit.
Yeah, that's a hard tournament to win when you got 500 boats, but somebody's going to win. Safety point, definitely. The reins need to be pulled back a little bit, as a safety point, because some of those lakes that they have to go to are very large lakes to hold those type tournaments.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
But hey, that's something we can talk about later. I would love to talk. Yeah,
about that.
Let's talk about Wheeler, man. I want to hear more about this win. And we got a comment in here that's from Bass Fanatic here. It says, what did you like most about Wheeler besides obviously the win?
What I liked about it is the versatility. You could pretty much fish your strength. You could run way up the river and fish, the river, or you could fish the flats. You could fish offshore. You fish like John Cox with a frog. I mean, it was very. Guys caught them a lot of different ways, and I like going to places like that where you can kind of fish your strength. And I don't like it where everybody's bunched up, fishing same little stretch, or you know what I'm saying. It was pretty interesting the way it fished, because there was a lot of fish in that lake, but there were small key areas that had a lot of fish, that fishery surprised me to the quality. It really did. I knew that it had grass, and then some of it had died back, and there was some fish in that place. Of course, I'm going to say that because I won, but I mean, there was a lot of fish caught that week for as hot as it was.
Yeah. Well, and the way that's set up and the way we were watching you fish on live, a bunch of people were like, wait, this makes perfect sense. Like for like what we've seen you do on St. John's.
Right.
From your perspective, did it set up very similar to the way the St. John's River does?
Yeah. I found those fish when the current was running just a little bit, and here on the river, we fish shallow shell bars, with current. And that was the same type deal there. It was a shallow, hard spot, shell, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's basically the same type scenario, which we don't have any grass here anymore. They had some grass there, but it was basic 101 fishing for me.
Yeah, so that kind of helps that you feel at home for a practice like that. Probably not making too many casts though, right? You're probably spending most of your time idling and looking for those areas versus trying to catch one in it.
When I found those fish the first day, it was hot, and a buddy of mine called me, and I was on the phone with him, and I was trying to. Everybody was fishing the channel, the edge of the channel. And I got a couple of 100 yards in, and I said, if I can find a ditch or something in the flats that's not obvious to everybody, maybe it'll be a little something different. And I was on the phone with him, and I just happened to look up, and I seen a shad run one way, and then I seen another one run the other way. I'm like, well, might ought to stop and make a cast there. And I got off the phone with him, and I made a cast, and I got a bite. I shook it off because there was a couple other guys there, or close. And then I threw up there again. I had another bite, and I'm like, I just made a waypoint and I left. I'm like, I don't need to see anymore. That's a spot. There's more than one here. And then the last day of practice, my wife was with me, and it was about 1-2 o'clock, hot. I mean, just boiling hot. And I'm like, are you ready to go? Because I need to get back. We were staying about an hour and 15 minutes away.
Oh shoot!
I need to rig some tackle and stuff. And she goes, let's ride down here. I said, well, let's go check that one spot where I got a couple of bites. I wanted to idle it just to see if I could see anything. And when I shut down, I looked up. There was a local boat there, and I'm like, well, he's pretty close to that waypoint. About the time I seen him set the hook, and he had his trolling motor on spot lock, and he was standing in the back of the boat. And I mean, literally, he was catching them every cast. And I seen him weigh one, so I knew it was a good one. I was far enough away from him. And I just kind of like, well, this is probably where I'll start, because the other two places that I had were 12 or 13 pounds, if I catch the best five, I felt like. So I started there the next morning. It took me 3 casts, and it was 5 casts. I had it 17 or 18 pounds, and that was pretty much the way it went. It was nuts in the morning there.
Yeah. Did you have that It looked like you had it mostly to yourself too throughout the tournament.
I did, man. When I caught, I didn't know how much weight I had because I didn't weigh any of them. I had a young boy in my boat. He was 18 years old. He was a sophomore in high school. And I said, man, I hate to do this to you, but I said, it's going to get really boring today. And he goes, what do you mean? Because, we were catching them every cast. And when I caught my last, what I figured was close to 4 pounds, I said, I'm not making another cast. And I put this fish in the live well, and I call a 2.5 pounder, and I stand up, and I've got my power poles down. I stand up, and there's a half acre of fish come up, and they're chasing gizzard shad the size of my hand, and I'm like, I didn't know they were here that good. And I told him, I said, man, I'm not making another cast in them today. I said, I've got, I'm not going to be leading it, but I said, I'm not going to be in last place. And I said, this is going to have to last me for 4 days because I don't have anything like this anywhere. So I just pretty much stayed there all day. And if somebody started fishing my way, I just started fishing towards them and just trying to keep them away because it was slick calm. There was no wind, and you could see those gizzard shad running from 200 yards away if you knew where to look. And so I just pretty much stayed there and kind of to see if anybody else was going to try to get there. I was shocked nobody else tried to get there.
Yeah.
And the next morning I was boat like 90 something, and I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I'll get there or not. Nobody was there. And that second morning, in 30 minutes, I pretty much had my weight, and then I caught a couple of really good ones about 9 o'clock, and I was done again. And I'm like, I told my cameraman, I said, it's fixing to get real boring, man. I said, you might as well set that camera on the carpet.
Break out the PB&Js. It's lunchtime at 9 a.m.
And I just stayed there and just, kind of kept everybody at bay. Nobody really tried to come in there. Caleb Summerall was there, and there were several guys there, but they never come over, and then by the third day, everybody was pretty much honoring what I had going. And then the third day was the really good day. It was slick calm that morning, and it was nuts. I had 26 that day, and I lost another 20-pound bag in that stretch of time that I had the 26. They were chewing that day. It was crazy.
What do you think? Because obviously when you look at your 4 days, it's like a mountain peak, your day 3 compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
What do you think was the factor?
You can, for whatever reason, the bigger fish bit when it was slick calm. For whatever reason, about every morning when I got there, the first 2 mornings, there was a little bit of ripple on the water, and they were biting. I caught them good, but that third morning, and every day about 8:30, the wind would quit. The first 2 days, it would get slick calm. That's when I caught my good ones both days, the first and second day. The third day, it was slick calm when I got there. So the big ones were already biting, and it was literally every cast. And when I got to my spot, my first cast on the juice, I lose a 4.5. And I'm like, golly, and I throw back up there, and then I catch a 5. And I'm like, all right, now we're good, And then it was
takes the pain away.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, we made up for that, But that day, and then the third day, the wind was blowing more, and it didn't stop blowing that day. It kept blowing all day. And for whatever reason, I just, there was always about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Between 8:30 and 9:30, I would always catch a good one. And the last day, they just didn't. I guess I hit on them enough and caught enough of them that. And I was getting some bites. They were just nipping at it, and and stuff like that. And I tried other stuff. I just couldn't get it through the grass to present it to them where they'd eat it.
What on that last day?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any voices in your head going at any point in time?
I knew I had a good lead, and I'm like, if I catch anything over 10 pounds, somebody's going to have a really good day. And I said, if I get around the 13, and I was borderline right there till the end of the day. I caught one good one that caught a 2.5 pounder that got me to 15. And when I caught that last one about 130, I'm like, man, somebody's going to have a really, better day than I had to beat me, So I knew there was a possible chance of a 30-pound bag, because that third day, I possibly could have had that, if I'd have landed everything that bit, I could have had a little bit better, because there was a couple of fish there that I could have culled, but I really didn't know I had that much weight. But the last time I went in and culled and I couldn't see any white in the bottom of my live well, I said, we're good for today. We're not
Absolutely
fishing no more. I said, there's a good bag in there,
Can you imagine being one of the guys that had like 23, 24 pounds at Lake Fork?
Oh yeah.
And here's Cliff with 26 on Wheeler.
Yeah.
Oh, that's demoralizing, but it's impressive though, dude. Like, and the way you're catching was basically just mostly a jackhammer, right?
Yep. I caught him with a jackhammer with a Bass Assassin swim bait on the back of it, and that's just, everybody says, well, why that? That's what I throw here, and that's my confidence. That's what I catch them on here, doing basically the same thing, I don't catch a lot of fish doing that. I usually catch good ones. It's not a bait that you come here and and expect to catch a limit, but to catch a good one doing that, fishing shallow bars or shell, you can catch a good one doing that. Dragging that thing and hopping it, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and kind of walk us through the setup for that route. I know the chatterbait route, I feel like, is still a topic of conversation nowadays between the glass or composite versus.
Yeah, Brett Hite's made the chatterbait, the most popular one of the, that's his deal, and I've never felt his rod. I'm sure it's a pretty soft tip, and the rod that I use is a 7.3 medium all-purpose Fitzgerald, and it's got a pretty soft tip on it, and you can put braid on it if you want to take some of that out, but I always throw my chatterbait on fluorocarbon, and I just like it where the rod loads up, where they can eat it. It's kind of, my opinion of chatterbait is almost like a swim bait. You want them to have time to eat it before you set the hook. If you do, a lot of times you miss them, and that was really key with these fish, because for whatever reason, I mean, some of the casts I would make, they would bite it 4 times before they'd actually eat it. And if I tried to set the hook before they actually loaded up on it, you'd pull it away from them and they wouldn't eat it. They knew it wasn't the real deal, or for whatever reason, they didn't want any erratic action. They wanted it real slow, real subtle. That's when I caught the better ones anyway. Some of the smaller fish ate it before it hit the bottom. But there was just a pile of fish there. It was the good Lord showed me where to throw it. I can tell you that, because that was a place that it was a very special place that you don't find every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you dive into like the reel, the gear speed, and then what pound fluoro you use?
Using 17-pound Seagar Tatsu, and I was using a 7.4 Karada. I would have liked to use a 6, but I like a 7 because I can control the speed a little bit better. And if a lot of times when they eat a chatterbait or a swim bait or something like that, they swim towards you and you have to make up some ground. So you need a little bit. I don't like an 8, and I like a 6, but a lot of times you can't catch up to them.
Right.
So 7.4 was what I used with 17-pound. I used a little bit of 15, but I like the 17. That way I could, I got him on, I could pretty much boat flip him if I wanted to.
Yeah.
See, I love that because I feel the same way when it's got the too slow of a gear ratio and you can't catch them. One, you just feel like a dummy, and you probably look like a dummy because you're just trying to.
Yeah, even with the 7, sometimes if it's on a long cast and you got a lot of line off your spool, it's a lot of times it's hard to catch up. But I feel like an 8, and here was the deal: if you threw it out there and just wound it back, I couldn't get a bite. I had to throw it out there and let it hit the bottom like a worm, and just kind of hop it up and then get it going, and then just slowly crawl it on the bottom. They wanted it close to the bottom, if not touching. And I felt like an 8. I just couldn't control the speed of it as well.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people still see the chatterbait as chuck and wind versus it being actually rather versatile in regards to the cadence of the slow roll on bottom versus also being able to hop it almost kind of like a rattle trap, like yo-yoing it, different things you can do with it?
My experience with it is almost like a swim jig. You don't want it too fast. You want it down where you can't see it. You want to let it sink a little bit. And that's when I get my most bites. I know a lot of guys crank it just underneath the surface and stuff at times that works, but for the most part, when I'm using it during the spawn or a shad spawn type thing, I like it a little closer to the bottom.
Makes sense. So now, with how you fish, we've seen you fish like that on St. John's, on Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
Would you call yourself an offshore guy? Like you like to fish that way?
Oh, I love fishing offshore. I love using my electronics. I didn't use them there. I was triangulating like the old school days. I was using my GPS to get me to where I needed to be, but I had a couple of stacks and stuff on those plants and stuff that I was lining up, and I knew exactly where I needed to get to make that exact cast. And I mean, it wasn't that I didn't want to use my electronics. I just felt like those fish were probably pressured, and anything I could do staying away from them, turning my electronics off, I felt like that would help me get more bites.
I totally agree with that. I'm sure you do too, Andy, from the regard of when you're shallow, when you turn your electronics off. I don't know if it's a confidence thing because you hear people talk about how, biologists like fish can't feel the sonar and they say certain things like that. But then you turn this thing off when you're shallow and you start getting more bites. I don't know if that's just a confidence thing, but it's also like, are you sure? Are you sure about that? 'Cause it sure feels like these fish, they feel it.
Yeah, you have your trolling motor in the water or either climbing up on the back of your boat whenever you're swimming or whatever. You can hear that thing ticking. You can hear that thing pinging. And I'm sure if I can hear it, they can or feel it. Their lateral line can feel a lot. I've got a fish in the tank out here. That's something he can feel you walking from my house to the barn. And he knows when you're coming because he's up in the corner. Won't you to throw him something in the tank.
That's awesome.
So,
does he have a name?
Oh yeah, well I hadn't named him, but I've had him in there for about 5 years. He's pretty cool, man. I fed him some worms earlier today, and he'd come out. You can hold it up over the top of the water. You say a fish can't see, they can see because I can hold it up over the water and he'll eat it out of your hand out of the water. So I mean he can see. He can definitely sight fish or sight eat because that's something that can see it before it hits the water.
Now, are you product testing with this fish?
No. I don't catch him. I don't catch him out of my tank.
That's cool though. The interactions has got to be cool enough in itself.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. That's my fishing barometer. I can tell if the fish are feeding or not before I go to the river. I go out there, and if he's just laying on the bottom and he don't come over to the side of the tank, I'm like, well, we might as well wait a little while because if he's feeding, they're feeding. It's feed time.
That's cool. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
that's pretty smart.
Yeah.
We have a buddy here in Buffalo that, and Andy can confirm this. He never catches any of these fish. Has his own little pond. He basically just toys with them with top water and feeds them.
Yeah. I had some in my pond I could feed with my hand, and I think some otters got in there and took care of them. But he was pretty cool. You'd walk out there you'd open the gate and you'd see him waking, coming. You know, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You need to make that a content series, Cliff. Like you need to give him a name, and he'll be social media famous. I can promise you.
All right, I can do that.
I mean, look what happened when John Cox was trying to save the 10-pounder in his bathtub.
Yeah. Oh, I know, man. That was crazy. You ever seen him feeding cake?
Cake? No, that sounds like something John would do.
Though. He'd eat it. Yeah.
I feel like the options are endless.
Yeah.
But so one thing I wanted to ask you tonight was, you know, the one thing people talked about with this win coming at was it 13, 15 years in?
I started in 2012. Started fishing the elites in 12.
Okay. So with that, I mean, there definitely had to have been some trying times. So I'm curious with you on what might have been the lowest low, like from a mental standpoint, and also what was one thing. Obviously, this win is probably it from a positive standpoint.
Oh yeah.
But what was the one thing that for you that stands out that make you keep going?
You know, I mean, when I first started every year, I pretty much have an opportunity to win one or two. You know, and last couple of years, it's kind of gotten worse and worse. Not necessarily my performance, is just the competition level. I think has really stepped up with all the young guys and stuff like that. I mean, we've got some hammers on the tour right now, and they will flat sure take your money. But I don't know. You know, right before this event, you know, my daughter's fixing to get married this weekend, and before this event, I was having my before Wheeler, I was having my worst year ever, and still, you know, even at this last event, at Smith, I did terrible. And it's not that I'm not, you know, it's not that I'm not using forward-facing sonar and stuff like that. I'm not blaming it on that. It's just that I've just have not had a really good year. But before this event, before Wheeler, I told my wife, I said, you know, we've got 4 events and I haven't paid for them yet. I said, I could probably take that money that I'm going to spend on entry fees and what I'll spend traveling. I said, I can probably pay for most of Gracie's wedding with that money. And she goes, no, we're not going to quit now. We're going to see it to the end. I'm like, all right, well, as long as you're in, I'm in. And that's when I won Wheeler, you know, 2 weeks after that. So, and I didn't quit.
Awesome, dude.
You know, I mean, it just get to a point where you're like, I'm tired of getting my head bashed in, you know, and just having one of those years, you know. It's not that I've you know, wanted to quit. It's just like, why abuse myself anymore? But, you know, it was winning Wheeler was definitely a turnaround for 180 degrees from what the first of the season had been like.
Yeah. And with that, obviously, it's no secret that obviously times are changing in regards to how events are being won, how lakes are being approached.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Are you taking any like time when you're not, you know, at events or practice, things like that, to try to work on advancing or changing any or adjusting any part of your game?
Not really. I mean, I had a guy call me before Wheeler, and you know, and says, what do you think about Wheeler? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, have you done any research? I said, no. He said, what do you think you're going to do? I said, I'm going to go there with an open mind, and I'm going to go finding the way I want to catch them. And he goes, well, good luck. And anyway, I, you know, kind of some of those lakes with Smith, I kind of knew it was going to be a forward-facing deal, and Wheeler, I really didn't know. I mean, I had it on, you know, during practice for sure, but to find stumps and that sort of thing. But I'm not approaching these tournaments any different. I'm not. I was one of the first ones to get, you know, forward-facing sonar on my boat. I've been with Garmin when they come out with it, and I was one of the pros because I live here in Florida that they put it on their boat at ICAST, and I was one of the guys that went out and showed everybody. Me, Scott Martin, and I can't remember who else was there, but I remember Scott and I were there, and we were one of the first ones to get it. And the first tournament that I went to after I cast was South Dakota. We went to Wisconsin, I think, and then we went to South Dakota. And I told Bernie, I said, I had a practice was unbelievable. I said, man, I'm going to win this event. I said, man, it's crazy. I can see them out there in front and throw to them and catch them. Well, I didn't know that there was no trees in South Dakota that would block that 20-mile-an-hour wind. And I didn't know I wasn't good enough with it to stay up with them in the wind. I couldn't even stand up where I was catching them,
Right.
So I had to adjust the way I was fishing,
That's a whole different sport in itself.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, it was, in practice, I had an awesome practice. Every point I went to had them. They'd have be 3 or 4 big smallmouth. I could throw a swim bait out. I could throw a swim bait of any kind out there, and they'd come up and eat it. And I'm like, I told Bernie, I'm like, man, this is like, I said, there's no way I can't have a good event. And I don't even think I cashed a check when the wind started blowing, because it's a whole different ball game with that wind trying to do that deal. And those guys are good with it. They're a lot better than I am with it.
And now you got them doing that in 5-footers.
Yeah, that's unbelievable how they can do that.
Yeah. It's intriguing to see how things adjust from the professional tournament side of things, but I absolutely love. Sorry, go ahead.
These guys are approaching, practice way different, than when I first started, because I mean, you see guys that never leave the middle of the lake. They just stay out there until they figure out what they're doing, and that's just not the way I was brought up trying to find fish. If you went out there and they weren't on the points or, creek channels or something like that, you kind of went to the bank type thing to see if you could find something,
Right. You're saying they're out in the abyss, looking in the abyss until they find it.
Yeah, a lot of those guys, I mean, they live and die with it, and it's working,
Do you think we'll see a shift in like how those fish position? Like, will they?
No, I know that, like here on the river, when you start putting pressure on fish, they'll move. They'll literally, you might pull up there and catch 1 or 2, but they'll all leave. And I got a feeling that those deeper fish are probably going to do the same thing. You're not going to just be able to just follow them around and catch them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to feel like it's when we talk about evolution of fish, they there's the saying of Mother Nature always corrects itself. So
well, for instance, at Detroit, St. Clair, the first time I went there, I caught those fish off of 2D. I would drift around out there, let the wind blow me around, and I would see those fish on 2D, and I'd just pitch out the back of the boat, and I'd catch every one of them, And now that we've got forward facing, when I seen them with the forward facing, if you threw out there and he didn't come to it, he would disappear. He would leave. So I just had a feeling that they were getting conditioned to that, having that thing ping on them, and then you were casting to them. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but I never seen a fish leave on 2D, but I sure did see them leave watching them on forward facing. I seen them.
Yeah.
You'd ping them and then they just disappear. They that grass that grows up off the bottom, I don't know what it is, but shrimp grass or whatever it is, but they would definitely bury themselves up in it and disappear.
Well, isn't there an argument that could be made too that fishing pressure has probably done a lot to it besides forward-facing sonar, right? Like there's so many more people coming up and fishing the North Country now than there ever have been.
When the first few times I went to St. Clair, I never remember seeing, catching a big one and, his jaws tore up from being caught. And the last time I was there, I caught a lot of fish that had been caught, which is a good thing. It shows that they're surviving. being caught, but definitely the fishing pressures definitely changing the way those fish feed and act to a boat for fishing pressure.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're almost getting accustomed to the fact that they're like, hey, there's this big shadow over my head, these floating shadows, and I'm getting caught every time when I'm below them. I should probably stay away from these shadows.
Yeah, when like I say, when the first time I went there, I was out there, right out in the middle of the lake in 20 to 25 foot of water, throwing a drop shot around. And they would, when you'd see them on 2D, they'd be underneath the boat, and you just pitch your worm out the back of the boat. They didn't want you to move it; they just wanted it out the back for whatever reason. And they'd swim up and eat it every time. Now they don't. I don't know that you could do that.
There's been times like fishing with Andy and other folks on their boats where I've had that where it's like they have Andy has his 2D deucer connected to the back, so that's like where it's reading off of, and you'll pitch back there. And I've had that same thought of like, for some reason, it's always in the back of the boat you can drop on them, and I've always had this weird, funny feeling in my head of those fish are just like, oh, ha, he went past me. He has no idea I'm here. He hasn't seen me. Look at that, there's bait. And then
food. Bernie Schultz and I roomed together, and he always told me, he said, every now and then, he said, you just pitch out the back of the boat, because he said those smallmouth are curious, and he was dead on, because I mean they'll actually follow your boat, and that's the first couple times I was there. That's how I caught them, was pitching out the back. I couldn't catch them casting out the front. They would just seem like they would follow you for whatever reason, just being curious, I guess.
Yeah, I've noticed that up here in New York. I almost went to go say a specific body of water. I remember you guys are going there, so I'm gonna be smart and not talk about any lake names. But there's been times where I'm on like the Finger Lakes, for example, where I'm in the kayak and you go and it's clear water, and you go and look behind you as you're going down, and you're like throwing hair or top water, whatever, and you look back and you're like, oh, there's a 4-pound largemouth that's just literally sitting there following my boat.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. There's a 3-pound smallmouth with it too.
Yeah.
To your point, yeah, like there's no, especially I feel like when it comes to smallmouth.
Yeah.
Throw it back.
Every now and then he just got to pitch one back there,
Yeah, it's crazy how many, when I'm guiding, I'll actually see on like 2D, if I'm sitting on my console, like rise up, then stop like 10 feet below the boat, and then just go back down. You're like, what is that fish even doing? But you're just curious.
Yeah.
Are you going to feed me?
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to throw a potato in the boat?
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that this past weekend. I went out there because the past like month and a half I've been basically just fishing shallow, fishing grass type of deal. To the fishing's been calling for it. It's that time of year in New York where every fish is shallow. You can go have that kind of fun. But we're getting to that late summer pattern now where a bunch of fish are going to start roaming, and it's that time to be using forward facing if you're fishing tournament type of deal.
Yeah.
And so I went out this weekend to sharpen that tool and get back in the groove of that.
Right.
And I'm just sitting there rigging up a rod, and I see this pod that I was out at the lake where they've all post spawn. It's like they chase bait, same thing you see on Smith.
Right.
And I see this pod there. I have nothing in the water, and this school just immediately is coming to me and immediately beelines for the shadow.
Wow.
So like it's crazy stuff that you can just learn just from using the tech.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Like 3 different pods, they just come up and get curious.
Yeah,
I noticed that too, and I just drop right below the boat, and they come up.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's crazy the curiosity of these things.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, so how you feeling about smallmouth territory?
Man, Plattsburgh's always kicked my tail because I always try to largemouth fish, and and there's a lot of largemouth in that place, but it's hard to catch a 4-pound largemouth, and there are so many 4-pound smallmouth. It's if Ticonderoga doesn't play, you're just fishing for 65th, and and I know that because I've had my teeth kicked in every time I go there. But the St. Lawrence, I've never been a threat to win there, but I've had some good finishes there. Those weights are so tight up there. You just got to figure out how to catch a couple of really good ones a day. And when I say good ones, 4.5 or better, to be over the 18.5, pound mark, you need to be up 19 plus for, and with us going out of Waddington, I don't know. That's makes a lot of guys think about not going to the lake, so that is a pretty good run.
I was gonna say, that's one of the things I was gonna ask you is how many people you think are gonna make that run to the lake now? With
I'm sure a bunch of guys are. If you want to win, that's where you got to go. That's pretty much if you want to win, that's where the big ones are for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'll be curious to see, and obviously that's gonna be weather dependent, too. I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. That river gets pretty dadgum sporty if that wind blows against that current. It gets pretty nasty. But those guys know how to run it, and there'll be some guys do it, I'm sure, regardless.
Yeah, if your name's ends in Johnston, you're gonna end up going.
You're going.
There's only one way they drive. It's just put the hammer down and go.
I do not want to be their camera guy. There's one. Yeah, I don't want to be a camera guy. Yeah.
So, are there a few guys on tour that you guys joke and tease with that you're like, yeah, I don't want to be in his boat?
At certain events, yeah, there's always that guy, because he's going to run to the other end of the world, But
are there any of them you can call out for fun here?
I'm not going to go there.
No? All right.
No.
From some of my clients being marshals, I have a list of names of guys that I do not want to get in the boat with.
I guarantee you. Yeah, I guarantee you. I always try to take care of my marshals,
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, and I'll say it because I'd gladly say it to his face. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just thought it was funny. But the most scared I've ever been in my entire life is when I drew Chris Johnson in the St. Lawrence Open. Yeah. And of course, that morning we see the most freighters I've ever seen in the St. Lawrence, and I live in New York.
Yeah,
that dude does not slow down for freighter waves. Let me tell you.
Oh man!
I'm just sitting there. The first.
So what? It's a Ranger. It'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, so what was crazy is the first time. Obviously we're ripping out of Clayton, and of course I'm just holding on, and it's not that bad because it's glass calm, whatever. But we come to this first freighter wave. In the back of my mind, I'm like, of course, obviously, he's going to slow down for these things. And we're getting closer and closer. And I'm like, wait, we're not slowing down. So I tighten my grip on everything, and we just ramp and skip across that sucker. I look at him, and there's just like nothing. Like, just keeps going.
No emotion.
By the time we got done, dude, my hand was like crimped into this form because I was holding on to the seat so hard.
I guarantee you, man. Yeah, last year when we went, I run back almost to Waddington, and I run a Phoenix. So I was one of the first ones every day to running down that river, and that's what I was always looking for was those freighters, because they'll run behind those islands, and man, you hit one of those waves and not know it. Oh man, that thing. Brutal. Yeah.
No bueno.
You go over one and through the next one.
Yeah. They're you can't mess around with those things. That's for sure. Because it's a good point too. Because if they go around the island, you didn't see it.
Yeah, and
you don't know
the way,
Yeah, but I will say, boat ride aside, it was a great day on the water. Chris is an awesome dude.
Yeah, he
boat
is.
Ride, a little scary.
Yeah, I like Chris. He's a good dude.
Yeah. It was a fun day.
He's just serious.
Very. It was really cool. I actually learned a lot. But it's the joking aside, it was fun. But man, looking ahead, obviously 2 events left, smallmouth third, but going into next season, I guess. You probably would like to see more TVA stuff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, shoot, yeah, man. I'm good at offshore. I'm not afraid of that, and I don't know if we'll go back in July or not, but because there was a lot of guys melting down, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I like fishing offshore, and that style fits me. I mean, I can catch them a lot of different ways, but that's kind of my cup of tea for sure.
What would you say? Obviously, beyond St. John's River is your favorite body of water to go to.
Mm-hmm. I really like Falcon, and I like the St. Lawrence. Both of those are two of my favorite places to go. If I was going to take a vacation, that's one of the two that I would go to. As far as in the United States, for sure.
Obviously, right now being a touchy subject, but you think we'll ever see bass go back to Falcon?
I don't know. The time I was there, Championship Sunday, we almost couldn't put our boats in the water because the water was dropping so fast. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever go back or not. I sure wish we would.
Yeah,
that place was phenomenal. Good gosh, that place had some fish in it, big ones too.
I'm trying to remember. We had, I don't remember if it was Falcon or if it was
Falcon and Amistad are right there.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Falcon. So we had the Strack brothers on at the same time, and they were telling us about a story of essentially them outrunning the cartel on Fletcher's bass boat. And I think it was Falcon the one time.
really?
And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, if we had a live event now, and you imagine like Matt Robertson on live, and you got the cartel boats out there, I'm like, you have some great TV going on. I don't know if I'd rather watch Christie, Hackney, or Robertson dealing with that situation.
Oh,
that might be why they don't go back. Is that right there? Dangerous.
Yeah, when we went there, everybody was like, "Man, it's going to be bad," and I never had any issues. But I was rooming with Jason Williamson at the time, and we were staying right on the lake, kind of on a hill. And they had one of those towers like you see in like a mall parking lot with the raise up tower. And there was a cop in there 24/7. So, and you'd be there in the evening rigging tackle or something like that, and hear automatic weapons going off on the other side of the lake, like, oh, I don't want to go in that creek, on the other side of the lake.
Oh,
yeah. So we'll have to get him back on here to tell the story himself. But it was Gary Klein was telling me a story of how he went back into one of the creeks, and basically a guy on a hill came down and told him, "Was like, hey, you better turn around." And I'm not doing this story any justice. We'll have to have it come from Gary, but basically he learned what parts of the lake to fish and not to fish.
Yeah, I think that was Louisiana. I think, if I'm not mistaken. Not necessarily he had run into that same problem at Falcon, but I know he run into an issue in Louisiana one time with the same thing. But
we need to have that, but we also actually have, you brought him up earlier, Bernie Schultz. Bernie agreed that after the northern swing, he's going to come on and share a whole bunch of stories from back in the day that he's experienced and seen. So I'm thoroughly looking forward to that. We're going to make like a category of like wildest, funniest, some of the different things he's seen.
He's been there, seen that, and done that. I can tell you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like I hear like all these road trip stories of like guys that have traveled like the opens and stuff, and it's like some people never see anything, and then others will be like, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what I saw on the road, like 7 miles down past that exit," and they're like. Yeah, it's even crazier. I got to the body of water and I saw this happening on the side of the bank, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I've had some good ones, especially when I first started. When I was rooming with my partner, we went to a tournament. I won't say the state or I won't say the town just because I don't want to bash anything. But he goes, "Man, I got us a hotel." I'm like, "All right." Well, we pull up and the guy's behind about 2.5 inch thick glass, and he shoves this pan out there, and my partner says, "Man, how much is it?" He goes, $200 week or month, and I'm like, "Oh boy!" So he throws $200 in the thing, and he reels the thing back. And when we get back out there, we're parked out in front of the hotel, and there's a cop sitting there. He goes, "Boys, I don't think y'all want to be staying here." I looked at Larry. I'm like, "Man, you sure?" He goes, "Oh man, we'll be fine." We pull around to the back, go in the room. We hadn't no more than shut the door and threw our bags on the bed. We hear thump, 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 thump. Somebody knocking on the door. He goes, "Hey man, you want to buy a generator in the box? $150." I'm like, "Dude, we got to go." I said, "We got to go from here." I said, "We got to find something else."
At least it was a generator, because I guess it could be worse things. But
it's powerful. You want to buy it back?
Yeah. I got your live scope for you.
Yeah. You want to fish with it this week? I'll sell it to you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like that should have been the first sign, is the cop telling you guys not to stay there.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. You gotta have seen some weird stuff on the road too. Like, what's some of the wildest things you've seen on tour, like on the Elite?
I don't know that. I mean, that right there is just one that kind of stuck out to me, because it was when I first started, and I was freaking out because I wasn't sleeping at my house. I was sleeping in some strange town I've never been to, but I don't know. Some strange, like I say, when we were at Falcon, I was always tripping, because they're literally all down, you're right on the border, so all the cops were lined up on everywhere that there was any kind of road that butted up to the lake. So it was kind of freaky. And I mean, you'd be out there fishing and hearing gunshots and stuff like that on that side. I'm like, I don't even want to go to the Mexican side of the lake, because you don't know. There's guys over there, and I'm like, man, they're brave, but I definitely didn't run up any creeks on that side for sure. But
sheesh. Oh, yeah. Thanks.
No, I'll catch them on this side.
Yeah.
You at least have a chance to see him come and get out of there.
Yeah.
Are you a Airbnb guy, hotel, camping?
Yeah, especially if my family goes, we'll Airbnb or whatever, and just to have a little bit more of a comfortable place to stay. A lot of times, we've been doing it long enough. Bernie's been doing it long enough. We know somebody that lives close or whatever. That's what we like to do, so, get to see friends and hang out and have a safe place to stay is the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's definitely a fun part about it.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, you got anything left for Cliff before we hit him with the last question?
No, you can go ahead and hit him with the last question.
All right, so Cliff, like the first question we had for you, everyone that's new to the show, we like to leave them with one last question to yeah. And so that is, if you could sit down with 3 different people, they could be alive 1,000 years ago, be alive now. They don't even have to be the fishing industry. It could be somebody from sports, historical, whomever. What 3 people would you invite, have a steak and a beer, pick their brain?
To pick their brain?
Yes, sir.
It'd be Kevin Van Dam, Rick Clunn, and probably Roland Martin. Because those guys have been there, done that, and caught them from an inch of water to 150 foot of water. So I want to pick their brains and know how they look at a lake, back then versus now, and just see how they dissect and what they say was the difference for them being able to stay and have a career in bass fishing, like they've been a staple for ever since I've been watching bass fishing.
Cliff, I think that was the quickest we've ever had anybody answer that question.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same
thing. Well, I'd like to know if I could plug into those 3. I think I'd be a pretty good fisherman at the end of it.
I think One you already are, but then those three you have a lot of juice in there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, dude, seriously, thank you so much for taking time out. Definitely want to get you back on here.
Yep.
Are you gonna be at ICAST next week?
Yes, I am. I'm only about 2.5 hours from it, so yeah, I'll be there.
What booth will you be at?
I'll be at Fitzgerald. I'll be at Bass Assassin. I'll be at Owner, Garmin. Those will be the main ones that I'll be around for sure. Yeah.
Well, come happy hour. I will come try to make my rounds and find you. At least introduce myself. But yes, sir. Appreciate you taking the time out. Congrats again on the dub. And looking forward to getting you on here again, man.
Anytime. Look forward to it.
All right, Cliff. Thank you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Good evening.
There you have it, folks. Mr. Cliff Prince,
Awesome.
recent Bassmaster Elite Series champ. And dude, I love hearing these stories of the stuff that you won't hear on Bassmaster Live, the stuff you won't, unless you're, sitting there on the round table drinking beers or something like that, rigging tackle, or on a show, you don't hear about those certain stuff. But Falcon 1 sounds amazingly fun, but also amazingly
terrifying.
Yeah. Terrifying. Yeah. We've that's the one thing I'll say. I'll admit it out loud with my job is, of planning these media events, different things for brands. I've had it brought up about when are you going to go back to Mexico? And it's like, I don't want to go back to Mexico. I've never been. I don't know if I want to go. I heard the fishing's amazing, but
is it worth it?
Yeah. How much do I value my life?
Yeah.
Imagine being a kayak back in those creeks.
Oof. You ain't running too far fast.
No. You're like, you better leave this creek. Well, I will in 30 minutes because it's going to take me that long to get here.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like,
what are you looking it up?
No, I'm just curious to see like when the last tournament was at Lake Falcon.
Was it Amistad that NPFL was at last year? Was it Amistad?
I think they were supposed to. Did they end up going?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they went. I'm pretty sure it's Amistad.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's definitely been a minute. That's for dang sure. Was it 15 they went to Falcon? I could be wrong.
There was one in 2021. They went in 13.
2021. They went to Falcon 2021? You sure?
No, there was a tournament there, but I don't know what it was. Like, I'm trying to find. Yeah.
No clue.
There's some Lake Falcon guide services. Could you imagine that one?
Lake Falcon Fishing and Protective Services?
Yeah, pretty much.
Jeez. Come buy your fishing license and your AR-15s.
Ironically, the guy hasn't posted on his website since 2020.
Ruh-roh.
Yes, big ruh-roh.
No. Yeah. Well, either way, great show tonight with Mr. Cliff Prince and Tom Reddington. Thank you to both who took the time out to be here tonight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that show. Looking forward to seeing everybody at ICAST next week, seeing Cliff at ICAST next week. Again, Tuesday Night Live next week is not going to happen. Obviously, with travel, ICAST, all that jazz. So we will be doing a pre-recorded show, doing our best anyway to get a pre-recorded show up and ready for next Tuesday night. Next Tuesday morning. That way you guys do have a show for next week. As always, tune into the Lure Lab. Great show to come this coming week, and I'm sure there'll be more ICAST stuff on the Lure Lab as well. So make sure you tune into that. And Andy, great show tonight. I am about to fall asleep.
Yeah, go get some sleep.
Yeah. Folks, appreciate y'all, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.